more and more companies focused on developing value from data analytics, the demand for business intelligence and data analysis talent is increasing, creating a premium on this type of knowledge. As a result of these demands, many colleges and universities are creating undergraduate and master's programs for teaching analytics. Many organizations, however, rely heavily on on-the-job training to meet their specific data analytics needs. Yet this may serve them well when it comes to hiring millennials. According to a recent study, training and development ranked 300% higher than cash bonuses for motivating millennials. Not only does this generation of workers seek continuous improvement and development, but two-thirds expect their employers to provide them with these opportunities. These so-called digital natives are ambitious, but only if the training is on their terms. What happens when the demand for analytic skills and knowledge intersects with the unique needs and demands of millennials? Let's find out. Hi, I'm Gene DeLibero, Community Manager of the Big Data Forum. During today's webcast, we'll explore the topic of analytics and millennials. Let's meet our guest. Joining us today is Annalise Polsky, Thought Leader and Business Solutions Manager for the SaaS Best Practices team. Welcome, Annalise. Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, thank you, Gene, and thanks to the Big Data Foundation for putting together this webinar. I think it's a great topic that really resonates with me on both a personal and professional level. Just so everyone knows, SaaS, of course, is the leader of business analytics software and services, and I myself am very lucky to work with a great team of experts. And our mission as SaaS Best Practices is to deliver thought-provoking content through a variety of media and communicate key industry trends to our customers and prospects. And I said that this matters to me personally. Well, let me tell you why. I am, a data nerd, technologist, geek, however you want to call it, and I always find myself asking why and why not. I started very far outside of the world of technology in anthropology, and over the years I've integrated my knowledge of people and culture into my love of data and technology. And I think that this has helped me really uncover some hidden and underlying issues with our customers that are not apparent to other people. So, I'm really on a quest to understand the connection of culture to technology and organizational behaviors and development.
Awesome. All right, let's dig right in. Millennials graduating from analytics programs are more likely to be attracted to organizations that use sophisticated techniques. But many employers are saying that more than half of millennials don't have the skills to immediately contribute to the business. That's a bit of a disconnect, yes?
It's interesting because there are more and more universities and colleges offering master's degree programs. In fact, I think there are over 70 right now in analytics and data science, and that number has grown quite a lot since 2007. One thing that you point out is that there's a very high expectation around what employees should know. And I think this ties so closely to the idea of being born digital or born into technology. And I think that's the point of the first disconnect. So one thing that's been amazing is through ease of use and access to technology, we've given people more ability to interface with different devices. I mean, the iPhone was revolutionary, the tablet's revolutionary. But, advanced techniques are also evolving. And, the other disconnect point to me is in the translation of theory to practice. So academic programs really ultimately need to be informed as much by, the skills that a student has to learn as they are by the business. And so we need to expose students really early to real business cases and to the terminology and the language of business. And when I think about attraction in particular, so sophisticated techniques are, the really cool stuff, predictive modeling, forecasting, AI, machine learning. Of course, we're drawn to that. It's like the shiny object. It sounds really, really cool. But I think that really the attraction is going beyond that. So companies that are attracting talent are positioning careers in analytics as impactful, collaborative, is really catering to a variety of skills. So now when we talk about analytics careers, that extends to things like data stewards and data scientists, and really some mobility, some room to grow and learn. So anytime I think of the companies that are doing more and are innovative, to me as a potential job seeker, that says, hey, there's some really cool room to grow here. And also tied to this is that very few organizations are changing their approach to attracting analytics talent. In fact, according to an MIT Sloan Management study, only 1 in 5 has really changed its approach to attracting and retaining analytics talent. So there really is a disconnect, and that disconnect is happening for really a variety of reasons.
Okay. Well, speaking of acquiring that talent and cultivating that talent, how do we over time bridge the gap between cultivating an analytics culture and acquiring new talent? And further, what's the underlying role that technology plays?
I mean, let's really start by saying analytics now is just paramount. It's not even something that we say is a good to have, nice to have. You need it to be competitive in the landscape today. And I'd like to dig in just for a second on what makes an analytics culture. So to me, that is, having data and knowing how to use it, not practicing analytics in a vacuum, having clarity of vision, so really being masters of focus, allowing for collective thinking, and having some executive support and the ability to fail fast. And the last one is really around nurturing skills. And so this kicks me off to my first point, which is differentiating between idealism and realism. So for a lot of new students or people who are graduating fresh out of college or fresh out of master's education, they need a soft landing because with each year of education and professional experience you have, you're growing your knowledge base. And Jean, I'm going to pick on you. So straight out of college, did you have the skills that you have today? Or how much have your skills changed, since you started on your career path?
Yeah, they've absolutely evolved, right? I mean, people coming out of college, especially today, they're not necessarily ready for what awaits them. So I'd say the short answer to the question is, wow, light years from then till now.
Yeah, so I think that, one of the ways that companies are helping bridge this gap is by investing in onboarding. And onboarding can take on a lot of different forms. So one of the ones that I've seen be very successful and I think is fruitful to companies is to really treat onboarding not just as placing somebody directly into a job, but as a job placement opportunity. So in one company, they spend a series of months learning a variety of database skills. So actually data management, they learn how to operate and use databases. They also dig into analytics and reporting, just a whole breadth. And as part of that process, they're working in teams, tackling real business problems, and there's somebody monitoring and overseeing their progress. And at the end, they're placed into the BUs, and they're placed based on the real demonstrable skill that they had as a result of the program. And I think that what this does is really makes that critical period of time after you've hired someone an opportunity to expose them to the kinds of responsibilities for the job that they're going to have in the near future, but also really getting them to see the problems that they might help solve in the future. And I think that this ties directly to another way that we can bridge the gap, and that's to be very clear about the barriers and challenges that we are experiencing as organizations in developing an analytic culture. So if analytics is undervalued by the organization, then there's no lone data scientist, no team of data scientists that is necessarily going to fix that. So to think about this a different way, I mean, almost 2/3 of analytic innovators give hiring and promotional preference to those with analytic capabilities. And contrast that with just 13% of companies that are analytically challenged. Now, this statistic comes from an MIT Sloan Management research study called the Talent Dividend. I think that this sort of flips it on its head, which says, if you are innovating in this space, then you are also investing in people with those capabilities, and you acknowledge that there's a growth curve and direction that you need to take your hires from the time that they're taken in through the time that they become embedded in these analytic teams. So it takes a real investment, and you need to be able to track that along the way. So I was just at our executive conference in Las Vegas, and I had these two soon-to-be graduated students from master's programs ask me advice about job search and interviews. And one of the struggles that they seem to be experiencing is how do I know when I'm taken into a company if I'm really going to, not just be valued, but be able to demonstrate and show that I've been successful. And so right from the get-go, just like we've got to soften the landing for people, we also have to be very clear about what analytic success looks like within the walls of our organization. And so my advice to them, of course, just a small piece of it was to really ask, how their manager is measured, to ask in the interview process how they're going to be measured and the kinds of projects that they might be working on to really get a sense of what is, in fact, a day in the life of somebody coming into a company. And so success in some instances may also be flagging errors and potential problems, and that doesn't necessarily tie to a monetary dollar sign. And this is a big challenge for a lot of analytics, which is how do you know when you've achieved the goal? So overall, we really, really need to be upfront and very clear with what that looks like if we want a successful outcome from our new hires. And likewise, we need people with complementary skills. I speak for myself and actually a lot of students that I graduated with, which is if you asked me 6 years ago if I thought I would wind up working for a software company, I don't think I would have said yes. But I'm so happy to be where I am today. And I think that the skills I've learned as an anthropologist, observational skills, understanding cultural dynamics and group dynamics, really being able to evaluate complex situations and embed myself in the problem has been invaluable to my ability to understand our customers' problems and help think through the kinds of data and information that we're going to need to solve them. So when I've visited recruiting events and when I've talked to especially large companies about the challenge of bringing in new hires, the common assumption is I need statisticians, I need mathematicians, and I need comp sci majors. And the truth is a lot of people further down the road, that wind up in analytic careers often have very diverse backgrounds from history, political science, philosophy. Everything is about integration and not just infusion of new skills and ideas.
A lot of what you've just described in your reply to my last question makes me think about something I've heard you talk about quite a bit in some of the work that you've done, and that is the employee experience. Can you explain that?
Yes. So I couldn't help but think of the customer experience when I started working through a lot of the employee challenges that we're experiencing in millennials and analytics culture. And that's because if we are trying to do all of those things, attract, acquire, retain, engage employees, these are part of a continuum of interactions that an employee is going to have with us. And I like this quote because it really is emphasizing that there's an interactive nature to the experience itself. It is as much about how employees improve our business as what we can do to improve work for them. So what I did to sort of think through the employee experience is map it against a life cycle. And if you've ever seen a customer life cycle, it looks a lot like this, where what we're doing is looking at different points of the relationship and our different points of our interaction with an employee throughout their relationship with us. So for example, we have a need phase. So we think through the employee need. They are based on a set of aspirations, circumstances, motivations, going to be looking for a job. They're going to research and investigate that job and evaluate it against others. And then they're going to make a decision. And hopefully, if their decision matches with ours, we're going to onboard them. And we also want a period of time in which we are engaging that employee. And you can substitute different words for advocate here, but I chose advocate because once an employee is engaged, we also want them to be very outwardly vocal about how they feel about our company, hopefully in a good way if we've done a good job of engaging them, and all the way through the transition period. And transition can mean exit. It could also mean, moving within the company itself. So the idea is that it's a complete relationship, and it's one that will go through a lot of different phases over time.
What about HR? How can analytics empower HR? And beyond that, what about other parts of the organization?
Yeah, so the reality is that, HR is going to have a continuing and dynamic role in the employee experience. It has a very dynamic role in the employee experience. And it's not just about how analytics empowers HR, but also how HR can empower other parts of the organization. And so for this, I'm actually going to ask us all to sort of think like marketers for a second, and I'm going to bring up two job descriptions. And each one is, a positive one. They're very good in terms of wording. But we have some opportunities to think about what this would look like to somebody viewing it from the outside, to our potential consumer if we're marketers. So the first one really emphasizes professional experience, collaboration, and the value of a combination of those things, where you are participating as much as the job is doing something for you. This is about what you can bring to the company. And I really like this because I think that the language is strong, it's inclusive, and it really makes people think that maybe I don't fit the sort of traditional checkbox, but I also have some experience that may be valuable to a company. And then I'm going to bring up another one here, and that the second one takes a different approach. It's more questions-based. It's more about can you project yourself onto this set of questions and definitions? Does it resonate with you? And the reason I bring this up is because when we think about the role of HR, a big part of their first, not the line of defense, but their first job is to put that verbiage out to the marketplace, right? They've got to get people interested in the job. And so I posit that, this would be a great opportunity. Analytics would be a great opportunity here to do some A/B testing, to try to maybe differentiate against different wording and language and structure to see how the pool of applicants changes as you change, the wording itself, and maybe it also means evaluating that against the channel, so where were those applications coming in from? Now we've got a lot of applications coming in through social networks. This is yet another place where we can start to analytically derive an insight about our candidate pool and population. And, maybe even figure out how that's affecting other opportunities that we have or other people that we might be leaving off the table. And so I think that this is really important because going back to building the dynamic teams and skills, we have to be really thinking carefully about who we're bringing into our candidate pool, and are we in fact attracting the right group of people, or maybe not just the right group, but a broad enough group of people from which we can find the best candidate. And I think that means, widening our language and widening our purview around who would make a good candidate and why. And I think HR has a really big role in that because we've got such good information sort of baked into our existing company. We can look at who we've hired already, the kinds of performance we've had and all of that, and start to weigh that against our future needs. So this brings me right to diving a little bit deeper into the data because analytics is synonymous with data. And in HR, we've got lots of sources of data: attrition, recruitment, payroll, absenteeism, learning, succession, surveys. I mean, there is just a huge body of knowledge. And, we can take that body of knowledge and really start to expand it over time. And so when we think of HR analytics, we're sort of resigned to the HR silo, and admittedly there's some protections over employee data that we have to work with and around. But when we start to broaden that and expand it, we can understand things that tap into other parts of the organization. So within sales, did they make a quota? How many people were processed? How many errors were made? There's far more interesting data also in those lines of business. So that scope is expanding more and more. And we can use a lot of the analytics that we apply in other areas. That goes right back to how tightly aligned or parallel this is to customer experience. So we can think about, what kind of products are customers likely to buy, which patients would adhere to medication. All these are the same kinds of approaches, similar kinds of concerns that we could be applying to our employee data as well, employee and job candidate data. So I think that we really have to have a clear vision of analytics, and we have to make sure that, our talent isn't just seen as sort of part and parcel to the success of the business, but as a huge part of it, as a main contributor to it. And that means really making sure that we have a strategy in place to deal with talent management. I mean, too often it's sort of resigned to its own space and not integrated into the larger strategic vision of the company. And so we've got to integrate those two worlds, and we need to see that talent will continue to grow and evolve over time, and therefore this strategy will as well too.
So that, for me, begs another question as you start talking about data and understanding, what's happening during that journey. What about workforce analytics? Where do they come into play, and exactly what are workforce analytics?
Yeah, so workforce analytics and HR analytics are sort of very tightly aligned. And when we talk about workforce analytics, we're looking at the analytics of recruitment, staffing, training and development, personnel and compensation, as well as benefits. And some of the things that we'd like to measure are, cost per hire, retention rate, offer acceptance. So it's really a much sort of broader look at our workforce in its totality. And there's some interesting places where analytics comes into play with this. So interestingly, I sort of see the same evolution of our understanding of workforce analytics as sort of the BI continuum, if you will. So we can start with some basic things, like even in the need phase. What is our total headcount? What are our costs? How do we currently view key talent? Are there some opportunities to really segment the data on demographics, skills, or education? And maybe what we could be doing sort of down that scale is doing some text mining against our incoming applications to look for keywords or things that are consistent across people that we ultimately wind up interviewing or hiring. And as we move along, let's say in the evaluate stage, look for things like, are there gaps in pay? Is there an average time to hire that's problematic? Actually, a good friend of mine just went through this recently where he got through the interview process, was really excited about the job, and they said it takes, 3 to 6 months for us to really get somebody in the door and onboarded. And that's a long time if you don't have, some secondary income or you don't have an additional, you don't have your current job in the wings. And I'll give you an example from Xerox. So Xerox did a study on the characteristics and job performance of frontline employees. And what they found is that those people with previous experience were really just as successful as people without any previous experience. And they found something else that was really interesting, which is that creative personalities stayed longer, as did candidates with one or more social network memberships. And by understanding those particular characteristics, that experience wasn't a precursor to success, and the importance of that social network membership, they were able to reduce attrition by 20%. Those are big numbers. And for Xerox, the cost of onboarding a new employee is about $5,000. So, 20% reduction in attrition at $5,000 per trainee or per hire is significant. And then, if we think about engagement, so this is another big area for opportunity for analytics. And I'm going to use Google as an example of this. So Google has, walks their employees through objectives and key results. So your employee sets a goal for themselves and outlines the quantifiable results. Managers rate them on a 5-point scale, and they've got a whole group of peer reviewers that get selected to give the employee a rating. And this is the very condensed version of what they do. But what they do is they use performance to determine not only how somebody is doing, but to also provide appropriate interventions for high and low performing individuals. They can really monitor for when and where somebody may be going awry. And what happens is because they've got this great performance process in place and that they're monitoring for that, is they can really identify maybe when somebody is misplaced or not on the right team, or maybe they're being poorly managed. So rather than the entire success of that employee being contingent on their rating itself, they're also really trying to dig into a little deeper to find out what those trigger events are, what points in their performance are very affected by other factors and other conditions so that they can remediate and help that person find success again. And I'm going to throw one more in here that I think is really interesting. And they've been doing it for a number of years, but it's a good example. So JetBlue has an employee satisfaction metric that really looks at individual employees' willingness to recommend JetBlue as a place to work. And they call this the crew member net promoter score, which is modeled really just like a customer satisfaction metric. And what they've done is looked to study the impact of compensation changes and figure out, executive bonuses as a result of this. And so employees are asked annually on their hiring date if they would recommend the company. So this is just like it says, it's just like net promoter score. They want to understand, does the external brand match the internal? Are we cultivating, people that are in fact going to recommend and promote our company over time? So there's, lots and lots of ways that we can use analytics, and frankly, even probably definitely more than we can fit into just one webinar. So it's a really fascinating and growing area.
Annalise, you touched on retaining employees at the beginning of our conversation. Can you elaborate on the specific approach organizations should take to retain millennials?
Absolutely. This is really, really critical. One interesting finding that I had recently was that, and this comes from our MIT Sloan Management research on the talent dividend, and this is that organizations are really actually investing more in the training of analytics amongst existing managers than really teaching analytics professionals to better understand the business. And I thought that that would be a great setup for the best practices I'm going to share with the audience, because we've got to see this from both sides. We're going to grow internally. We're going to build a love of analytics internally. And then likewise, though, we still have a lot to do in terms of preparing people for the business problems at hand. So to dig into the best practices. So the first one is segment, don't stereotype. So I spent some time in this session talking about all the data that we have, the different ways we can use analytics to better understand, those incoming employees and the employees that we have. And really critical to the success of that is to not confirm our own bias around millennials or, any generation for that matter, baby boomers. I think they're going to be the I generation or Gen Z, because we need to let the data drive and inform our view of this population. So this is about not being, data blind, but really being data aware and using it to our advantage. And that ties directly to using analytics then to really deepen our understanding and look at our internal data a different way. I mean, there's just some really amazing, cool stuff happening right now with the application of analytics within our workforce and looking at our HR data. I mean, the world is your oyster. If we can do it for our customers, we can do it with our employees. Likewise, though, that means some softer things. So outside of the technology and our use of technology, we really need to engage our employees from day one. We need to really put some deep time into consideration into education and training. And, I'm actually going to say that this is an important place, too, to remember that for a lot of employees, you're not going to remember everything you're taught on your first day. There's the adage of drinking from a fire hose, and it is a lot like that. So something that we do, I think, very well here, even at SAS, is provide an internal portal of information to employees. So whether I need information about our governance policies, when I need access to training on our products and our software, if I just have questions, I've got an entire portal there at my fingertips where I can go and connect with my fellow employees and get the information I need whenever I need it, and it's tremendously powerful. I also think that we need to remember along those lines of not stereotyping that we need dynamic and diverse teams. I look at my own team, and we are tiny. There's 9 of us, but we've really got a wide variety of people. We have people from organizational development. I'm an anthropologist. We have writers. We have graphic designers. And it is together that we wind up producing some really amazing work and content. And I'll give you another example, and it was really inspiring to me. And this is the story of Colleen Roberts. And she started out as a nurse, and she noticed that data was changing behaviors and improving patient outcomes. Now, she works for Intermountain Healthcare in Salt Lake City, Utah, and she was pretty excited by the data. And in 1998, at the age of 42, she went back to school for a master's in clinical informatics. She was not young, and she was not a programmer, but she really knew how clinicians worked and how to apply the data. And today she's a data manager for cardiovascular clinical program at Intermountain. So this is the individual aspirations and mobility. Here's somebody that age is just a number. She's got real knowledge, real skills, real information that she can tap into. And we want to support and cultivate that as a company, because that can only serve to help us in the future. And this also means building partnerships. So for Colleen, she was able to go back to school with the support of her employer. We here at SAS are building strong relationships with universities here in the area and around the country. We've now put out SAS U, which is a free product that students can use to get their hands into data analysis. And, we provide STEM education and training through our curriculum pathways. So it really is about tapping into your community and engaging the community. And I always sort of laugh when I think of how we work as a team with our customers, and that, every session we have is a little bit about airing that dirty laundry, but it's in exposing the problems, exposing the weaknesses, that someone can say, hey, I've got a great solution for that. But to do it, we need a dialogue, and we really need to tap into that community. And so, I'll wrap all this up with just sort of a final thought that I have, which is this topic really does matter to me personally and professionally, because I think that we've got just tremendous potential within our four walls from the people that we have in our own business. There's this great, new wave and the next wave and generation of employee that's coming to work for us. And really our ability to tap in and have success and grow our workforce in a happy and engaged way is contingent on all the same things. It's definitely not dependent on which generation you're from. We want challenges and diversity. We want to know that our work is impactful. We want to, be part of the leading and the cutting edge and feel that we've got the support of management. Of course, most of us want, financial securities and really to find that balance of learning and growing and a balance with our lives. And so, as you go through the process of maybe revising or rethinking your talent acquisition or retention or, engagement strategies, really try to think through it from a humanistic perspective and see people as individuals really working hard for their future, regardless of their age.
Well, on that note, it looks like our time is just about up today. It's been great talking with you, Annalise. Thanks for sharing your insight. I'd like to remind our listeners to check out the resources box on your player for additional information, including 2 very interesting SAS-sponsored studies by MIT Sloan Management. And if you'd like to contact us, just use the Ask a Question section and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. Of course, to continue the discussion, please visit thebigdataforum.com. It's a community of your peers, and we discuss all things big data. On behalf of the Big Data Forum, SAS and IDG, thanks for tuning in.